Daniel had always believed in the sanctity of marriage. He and his wife, Vanessa, had been together for nearly 12 years, building a life and a family that he was proud of. They had two beautiful children, a comfortable home, and a relationship that, to anyone looking from the outside, seemed solid and happy. But over the past few months, Daniel had noticed subtle changes in Vanessa. She seemed more distant, less engaged in their conversations, and often lost in her thoughts. At first, he chalked it up to the stresses of daily life, assuming it was just a phase that would pass. But the nagging feeling that something was off wouldn't leave him. He noticed that Vanessa had started spending more time on her phone, often smiling at messages she wouldn't share with him. She'd begun going out more frequently, claiming she was meeting up with friends or staying late at work. Daniel wanted to believe her, but there was a growing pit in his stomach that told him otherwise. One evening, as they sat down to dinner, Daniel tried to brush off his concerns and engage Vanessa in conversation. "How was your day?" he asked, his tone casual, but his eyes searching hers for any sign of the woman he had once known so well. Vanessa looked up from her plate, offering a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It was fine," she replied, her voice distant. "Just the usual busy day at work." Daniel nodded, forcing a smile. "I've noticed you've been working late a lot recently. Is everything okay?" There was a brief flicker of something, guilt, in Vanessa's eyes before she quickly looked away. "Yeah, just a lot of projects coming up. Nothing to worry about." But Daniel was worried. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that Vanessa wasn't being entirely truthful with him. He tried to push the thoughts aside, but they lingered, gnawing at the back of his mind. That night, after Vanessa had gone to bed, Daniel found himself unable to sleep. He stared up at the ceiling, his mind racing with suspicions and doubts. Was it possible that Vanessa was hiding something from him? Was there someone else? The thought made his heart ache, but he couldn't ignore it any longer. He needed to know the truth. The next day, while Vanessa was at work, Daniel did something he had never imagined himself doing. He checked her phone. He felt a pang of guilt as he picked up the device, but the need to know outweighed the feeling of betrayal. His hands trembled slightly as he unlocked the phone and began scrolling through her messages. What he found confirmed his worst fears. There, in the message thread, with a contact named L, were dozens of flirtatious texts exchanged over the past few months. Messages filled with inside jokes, suggestive comments, and plans to meet up in secret. The more he read, the more his heart shattered. Vanessa was having an affair, and she had been lying to him for months. Daniel's hands shook with a mixture of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak as he continued to scroll through the messages, each one a painful reminder of the trust that had been broken. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved, the mother of his children, had done this to him. How could she have thrown away everything they had built together for someone else? But as the initial shock began to wear off, it was replaced by a burning desire for revenge. If Vanessa thought she could get away with this, she was sorely mistaken. Daniel knew he needed to confront her, but not in the privacy of their home. No. He wanted the world to see the truth. He wanted to expose the lies, the deceit, and the betrayal in a way that Vanessa would never forget. As he sat there, staring at the incriminating messages on her phone, a plan began to form in his mind. He would make a video, one that would call out Vanessa's lover in front of everyone. It would be a public reckoning, a way to hold both of them accountable for their actions. It was drastic, yes, but the anger coursing through him left no room for doubt. Daniel spent the next few days carefully crafting his plan. He gathered the evidence, saved the messages, and even recorded a few of their recent phone calls that Vanessa had taken in secret, thinking he was oblivious to what was happening. With each new piece of evidence, Daniel's resolve grew stronger. He knew what he had to do. The final piece of the puzzle came when he discovered that Vanessa and her lover were planning to meet up at a party hosted by one of their mutual friends. It was the perfect opportunity. Daniel would attend the party as if everything was normal, but he would be armed with the truth and a video that would change everything. The days leading up to the party were a blur of emotions for Daniel. Every time he looked at Vanessa, a mix of anger and sorrow welled up inside him. He had loved her deeply, trusted her implicitly, and now that trust had been shattered. But he kept his emotions in check, playing the role of the unsuspecting husband, all the while preparing for the confrontation that would soon unfold. On the outside, Daniel appeared calm and composed. He continued with his daily routine, went to work, and interacted with Vanessa and their children as if nothing had changed. But inside, he was a storm of conflicting emotions: hurt, betrayal, and a burning desire for justice. He knew that what he was planning was extreme, but he couldn't shake the need to expose the truth, to make Vanessa and her lover face the consequences of their actions. The night of the party finally arrived, and Daniel could feel the tension building inside him as he got ready. He dressed in his usual casual attire, nothing to suggest that tonight would be any different from the countless other social gatherings they had attended over the years. Vanessa, on the other hand, seemed more excited than usual, spending extra time getting ready. Carefully choosing her outfit and applying her makeup with meticulous precision. As Daniel watched her from the doorway, a bitter thought crossed his mind. Was she dressing up for him or for the other man? The question gnawed at him, but he pushed it aside, knowing that soon everything would come to light. "Are you ready?" Vanessa asked with a smile as she turned to face him, her eyes sparkling with the anticipation of the evening ahead. Daniel forced a smile, though it felt hollow. "Yeah, let's go," he replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. The drive to the party was filled with small talk, Vanessa chatting about the latest office gossip, the kids' activities, and the plans she had for the weekend. Daniel responded in kind, keeping up the facade of normalcy, but his mind was elsewhere, focused on the task at hand. He had brought along the video he had prepared, a compilation of the incriminating messages and phone calls, along with a personal message from him, directed at Vanessa's lover. As they arrived at the party, the familiar sounds of laughter and music greeted them. It was a gathering of close friends, people they had known for years, and everyone seemed to be in high spirits. Vanessa was quickly swept up in the socializing, greeting friends with hugs and smiles, while Daniel hung back, his mind racing with the plan he was about to execute. He scanned the room, looking for the man who had come between them, and it didn't take long for him to spot him. L, the man from the messages. He was standing near the bar, chatting with a group of friends, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he made his way through the crowd, his resolve hardening with each step. He knew that what he was about to do would change everything, but he didn't care. Vanessa and her lover needed to be exposed for the liars they were, and he was going to make sure it happened in the most public way possible. He found the host of the party, a mutual friend named Mike, who was busy overseeing the event. Daniel pulled him aside, trying to keep his voice calm, as he explained that he had a special surprise he wanted to share with everyone. A video that he claimed was a tribute to Vanessa. Mike, unsuspecting of Daniel's true intentions, was more than happy to oblige. "Sure thing, Daniel. Let me just get everyone's attention, and we'll play it on the big screen," he said with a grin, clapping Daniel on the back. Daniel nodded, his heart pounding in his chest as he handed over the USB drive containing the video. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, the anticipation of what was about to happen building to a crescendo. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. As Mike gathered everyone's attention, the chatter in the room gradually died down, and the guests turned their focus to the large screen set up in the living room. Vanessa, who had been talking to a group of friends near the back of the room, looked up with curiosity, a small smile playing on her lips as she caught Daniel's eye. She had no idea what was coming. "Everyone, can I have your attention for a moment?" Mike called out, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Daniel here has prepared something special for Vanessa, a little tribute to the wonderful woman she is. So let's all gather around and watch." Vanessa's smile widened, and she moved closer to the screen, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Daniel stood at the back of the room, his heart racing as he watched her, waiting for the moment when everything would come crashing down. The video began to play, the screen showing a montage of photos and clips from their life together. Vacations, family gatherings, birthdays, all set to a soft, sentimental soundtrack. The crowd oohed and awed, with Vanessa beaming at the sight of their shared memories. But as the video progressed, the tone began to shift. The images of their happy life together faded away, replaced by screenshots of the messages between Vanessa and her lover. The soft music was abruptly replaced by the cold, clinical tone of a voiceover, Daniel's voice, detailing the affair in a calm, measured way, each word hitting Vanessa like a punch to the gut. The room fell silent, the smiles fading from the faces of the guests as they realized what was happening. Vanessa's expression of joy slowly morphed into one of horror as she watched the incriminating evidence play out on the screen for everyone to see. Her face went pale, her hands trembling as she brought them to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The final part of the video was a recording of a phone call between Vanessa and her lover, their voices filled with intimacy and secrecy. As the call ended, the screen faded to black, and Daniel's voice came back, this time addressing Vanessa's lover directly. "To the man who thought he could take my wife without consequence," Daniel's voice said, cold and steady. "This is for you. You've taken something from me, but tonight, I'm taking something from you. Your anonymity. Everyone here now knows what you've done, and I hope you're ready to face the consequences." The video ended, and the room was plunged into stunned silence. All eyes turned to Vanessa, who stood frozen in place, her face a mask of shock and humiliation. The guests looked at each other in disbelief, unsure of what to say or do. Daniel stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Vanessa, his heart pounding with a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a twisted sense of satisfaction. "So, Vanessa," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Care to explain?" Vanessa's eyes welled with tears, her voice trembling as she tried to find the words. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." But Daniel wasn't interested in apologies. He turned his attention to the man who had betrayed him, who was now standing near the back of the room, looking as though he wanted to disappear. "And you," Daniel said, his voice cold as ice, "how do you plan to explain this to everyone here? How do you live with yourself?" The man's face flushed with shame, and he stammered out a weak response. But Daniel wasn't listening. He had done what he set out to do. He had exposed the truth, and now everyone knew what Vanessa and her lover had done. The party was over, the atmosphere shattered beyond repair. The guests began to disperse, some murmuring words of sympathy to Daniel, others casting judgmental glances at Vanessa and her lover. The once joyful gathering had turned into a scene of heartbreak and betrayal, and there was no going back. As the last of the guests left, Vanessa stood alone in the living room, her tear-streaked face a picture of devastation. She looked at Daniel, her eyes pleading for forgiveness, but he couldn't bring himself to offer it. The love they had once shared was buried beneath layers of pain and betrayal, and he didn't know if it could ever be uncovered again. Without a word, Daniel turned and walked out of the room, leaving Vanessa behind. The video had done its job. It had exposed the lies and deceit for everyone to see. But as he left the house, a heavy feeling settled in his chest. Revenge had been sweet, but the bitterness of what had been lost would linger long after the night was over. The drive home after the party was agonizingly silent. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles white, as he replayed the events of the night in his mind. Vanessa sat beside him, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't spoken a word since they left the party, and the tension in the car was palpable. Daniel's heart was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sorrow, regret. The satisfaction he had felt while exposing Vanessa's affair at the party had been fleeting, quickly replaced by a deep, hollow emptiness. He had wanted to hurt her, to make her feel the same pain she had inflicted on him, but now that it was done, he wasn't sure if it had been worth it. As they pulled into the driveway of their home, Vanessa finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you like this." Daniel turned off the engine but didn't respond immediately. He stared straight ahead, his thoughts a tangled mess. He had wanted to hear those words, but now that they were out in the open, they did little to soothe the pain. "Sorry?" he finally said, his voice tight with emotion. "Sorry for what, Vanessa? For cheating on me? For lying to me? Or for getting caught?" Vanessa flinched at his words, her tears falling faster. "For everything. For betraying you. For breaking your trust. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway." Daniel let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Forgiveness? How am I supposed to forgive you, Vanessa? You didn't just cheat on me, you humiliated me. You threw away everything we had for what? Some cheap thrill." Vanessa sobbed quietly, her shoulders shaking with the weight of her guilt. "It wasn't like that, Daniel. I never meant for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I was lost and confused. I made a terrible mistake." Daniel clenched his fists, struggling to keep his emotions in check. "A mistake? Vanessa, this wasn't just one mistake. This was a series of choices. Choices you made every time you texted him, every time you met him, every time you lied to me." Vanessa buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled as she tried to find the words to explain herself. But what could she say that would make any of this better? The damage had been done, and there was no taking it back. They sat in the car for what felt like an eternity, the silence between them heavy, with unspoken words. Finally, Daniel took a deep breath and spoke, his voice calmer, but still laced with pain. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Vanessa. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, but I do know one thing. We can't keep living like this. We need to figure out what we're going to do, for our sake and for the kids' sake." Vanessa nodded, wiping away her tears as she tried to compose herself. "I know, Daniel, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right, even if that means letting you go." Daniel's heart twisted at her words, torn between the love he still felt for her and the overwhelming pain of her betrayal. "I need time," he said finally, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Time to think, time to figure out what I want. But right now I can't be near you. I need space." Vanessa nodded again, her voice trembling as she replied, "I'll give you all the time and space you need, Daniel. And if you want me to leave, I will. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry, and I'll never stop loving you, no matter what happens." Daniel didn't respond. He simply opened the car door and got out, walking toward the house without looking back. Vanessa followed him at a distance, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she had destroyed the life they had built together. She knew that things would never be the same again, and the weight of that realization was almost too much to bear. Over the next few days, the tension in the house was unbearable. Daniel and Vanessa avoided each other as much as possible, communicating only when necessary, mostly about the children. The kids, sensing the tension between their parents, grew quieter and more withdrawn, adding to the weight of the situation. The home, once filled with laughter and warmth, had become a place of silence and pain. Daniel spent most of his time at work or out of the house, avoiding the reality of the situation as much as he could. He couldn't bear to be around Vanessa, couldn't stand the sight of her knowing what she had done. But every time he left the house, he was confronted with the memories of the life they had shared, the love they had once had, and the knowledge that it had all been shattered. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Vanessa approached Daniel as he sat in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice trembling with emotion. "Daniel, we need to talk." Daniel glanced at her, his expression guarded. What is there left to say? Vanessa took a deep breath, steeling herself. "I know I've hurt you in ways I can never take back. And I know that you may never be able to forgive me. But we need to figure out what we're going to do for the kids' sake. We can't keep living like this." Daniel sighed, rubbing his hands over his face in frustration. "You're right, we can't. But I don't know what the answer is, Vanessa. I don't know if we can ever fix this." Vanessa's eyes welled with tears, but she forced herself to stay strong. "I know it's going to take time, and I know that things will never be the same. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try. I'm willing to go to therapy, to work on myself, to give you all the space you need. I don't want to give up on us, Daniel." Daniel looked at her, his heart aching at the sight of her tears. Part of him wanted to believe her, to hope that they could somehow find a way through this. But another part of him, the part that had been shattered by her betrayal, wasn't sure if that was possible. "I need time," he repeated, his voice hollow. "I don't know what I want yet, but I need time to figure it out. And in the meantime, I think it's best if you stay with your sister for a while." Vanessa nodded, her tears falling silently down her cheeks. "Okay, I'll go. But I want you to know that I'm not giving up on us, Daniel. I'm going to fight for our marriage, for our family, for as long as it takes." Daniel didn't respond. He simply nodded, his mind too exhausted to think any further. He watched as Vanessa packed a bag and quietly left the house, her departure leaving a void that was both a relief and a source of deep pain. In the days that followed, Daniel tried to focus on the practicalities of life, taking care of the kids, going to work, maintaining some semblance of normalcy, but the weight of what had happened hung over him like a dark cloud, suffocating him with its intensity. He replayed the events of the party over and over in his mind, wondering if he had gone too far, if he had done irreparable damage, not just to his marriage, but to himself. The video had been his way of seeking justice, of making Vanessa and her lover pay for what they had done. But now that the dust had settled, he couldn't escape the feeling that it had also cost him something precious, his own sense of peace. The anger that had driven him to expose them was still there, but it was now mingled with regret, a sense of loss that he couldn't shake. One evening, as he sat alone in the living room, the weight of everything finally came crashing down on him. The house was silent, the kids were asleep, and the loneliness was unbearable. He realized that in his quest for revenge, he had also isolated himself from the people he cared about most: his children, his friends, even Vanessa. The video had been his way of lashing out, but it hadn't brought him the closure he had hoped for. Daniel reached for his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for: his therapist. He hadn't been to therapy in years, not since before he and Vanessa got married, but he knew that he needed help. He couldn't do this alone. With a deep breath, he made the call, his voice shaking as he left a message. "Hi, it's Daniel. I need to talk. I think I need help." The next day, Daniel attended his first therapy session in years. As he sat in the therapist's office, he felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. He didn't know if therapy could help him navigate the mess his life had become, but he knew he had to try. The therapist, Dr. Harris, was a calm, compassionate woman in her 40s. She listened attentively as Daniel recounted everything that had happened: the affair, the video, the aftermath. She didn't judge him, didn't offer quick fixes. Instead, she guided him through his feelings, helping him to understand the anger, the hurt, and the regret that had been eating away at him. "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot of pain," Dr. Harris said gently, her voice soothing, "and that pain has led you to make some difficult decisions. But it's important to remember that healing takes time. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, and it's okay to take the time you need to process everything." Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. I don't know how to move forward. I don't know if I can ever forgive her, or if I even want to." Dr. Harris smiled softly. "Forgiveness is a process, Daniel. It's not something you have to decide right away. What's important is that you take care of yourself, that you allow yourself to heal. And that might mean setting boundaries, or taking space, or even just sitting with your feelings for a while." The session ended with Daniel feeling a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in weeks. He didn't have all the answers yet, but he knew that he was taking the first steps toward healing. Therapy became a regular part of his routine, a safe space where he could explore his emotions without judgment. Meanwhile, Vanessa continued to stay with her sister, giving Daniel the space he needed. She reached out to him occasionally, checking in on the kids, but she respected his need for distance. She too began therapy, determined to understand her own actions and to become a better person. Whether or not Daniel chose to take her back, the weeks turned into months, and slowly the pain began to ease. Daniel started to find joy in small things again, playing with his children, spending time with friends, even going for long walks to clear his mind. He was still uncertain about the future of his marriage, but he was beginning to feel more grounded, more in control of his own life. Then, one evening, after the kids were asleep, Daniel received a call from Vanessa. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Daniel, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I've been working on myself. I know that things will never be the same between us, but I'm hoping that we can talk, really talk, and see if there's any way forward." Daniel hesitated, his heart heavy with the weight of the decision he was about to make. He had spent so long feeling angry, hurt, and betrayed. But now, standing on the other side of those emotions, he realized that he still cared for Vanessa. The love they had shared wasn't gone. It was buried beneath the pain, but it was still there, waiting to be uncovered. "Okay," Daniel said finally, his voice steady. "Let's talk." Daniel sat in his quiet living room, the phone call with Vanessa still echoing in his mind. Her request to talk had been unexpected, yet not entirely surprising. He knew they couldn't avoid each other forever, not with the lives they had built and the children they shared. But now the question loomed larger than ever. Was there a way forward? Could they possibly rebuild something from the wreckage of their marriage? Or was this the end of the road for them? The weeks of therapy had helped Daniel start to untangle the mess of emotions he'd been carrying since the night of the party. The anger and pain had begun to recede, leaving behind a quieter, deeper sadness. But beneath it all, there was still love. Complicated, wounded, but love nonetheless. It was this love that made him consider Vanessa's request seriously. As the day of their meeting approached, Daniel found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the video, the aftermath. He had wanted to make Vanessa and her lover pay, and in a way, he had succeeded. But as he had learned through therapy, revenge was a double-edged sword. It had given him a temporary sense of power, but it had also isolated him from the very people he cared about most. Now, as he stood on the precipice of a new chapter, he realized that he needed to find a different way forward, one that wasn't driven by anger or bitterness. When the day finally arrived, Daniel felt a mix of emotions, nervousness, apprehension, but also a small flicker of hope. Vanessa had suggested they meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral place where they could talk without the weight of the past hanging over them like a dark cloud. Daniel agreed, knowing that if they were going to have any chance of moving forward, they needed to meet on equal footing. As Daniel walked into the cafe, he spotted Vanessa sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked up as he approached, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. It was clear that the time apart had taken its toll on both of them. Vanessa looked thinner, her face drawn with worry, while Daniel felt the weight of everything he had been through, etched into his very being. "Hi," Vanessa said softly as Daniel sat down across from her. "Hi," he replied, his voice equally tentative. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the silence between them, thick with everything they wanted to say, but didn't know how to begin. Finally, Vanessa broke the silence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of soul-searching, and I know that I've hurt you in the ways I can never take back. But I also know that I still love you, Daniel, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try to rebuild what we had." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle over him. "I've been thinking too," he said slowly, "about everything that happened, about the choices we both made. And I've realized that I don't want to keep living in the past. I don't want to be defined by what happened that night or by the anger I felt. But I also don't know if I can ever truly forgive you, Vanessa. I don't know if we can go back to the way things were." Vanessa nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever. But I want to be honest with you, and I want to take responsibility for my actions. I was selfish, I was reckless, and I betrayed your trust. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm asking for it because I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our family." Daniel looked down at his hands, his heart heavy with the weight of everything they had been through. "I appreciate your honesty, Vanessa, and I want to believe that we can find a way forward, but it's going to take time, a lot of time, and I'm not sure where we'll end up." Vanessa reached across the table, her hand trembling as she placed it over his. "I'm willing to take that time, Daniel. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, no matter how long it takes. I just want a chance to make things right, to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat as he looked at her, the sincerity in her eyes clear. He could see how much she was hurting, how much she regretted what had happened. And despite everything, he still loved her. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for them to find their way back to each other. "I want that too," Daniel said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to try. For us, for the kids. But we need to be realistic. This isn't going to be easy, and there's no guarantee that we'll be able to fix what's been broken." Vanessa nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "I know, but I'm willing to try, and I'm willing to accept whatever outcome we come to, as long as we both give it our all." They sat in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt a glimmer of hope. He wasn't sure if they could ever fully heal, but he knew that they were both committed to trying. In the weeks that followed their meeting at the cafe, Daniel and Vanessa began the slow process of rebuilding their relationship. They agreed to attend couples therapy together, knowing that they needed help to navigate the complexities of their situation. The sessions were difficult, forcing them to confront the deep-seated issues that had led to the affair and the subsequent fallout. But they also provided a space for them to communicate openly, to express their fears and hopes without judgment. At home, they focused on being present for their children, trying to create a sense of stability amidst the turmoil. They spent more time together as a family, going on outings, playing games, and simply enjoying each other's company. It wasn't always easy. There were still moments of tension, moments where the past threatened to overshadow the present, but they were committed to making it work, to finding a new way forward. Daniel found that as time went on, the anger and resentment he had felt began to fade. The therapy sessions helped him process his emotions, and he started to see Vanessa not just as the woman who had betrayed him, but as someone who was deeply flawed, just as he was. He realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing what had happened. It was about letting go of the need for revenge, about finding peace within himself. Vanessa, too, was changing. She took full responsibility for her actions, and she made a conscious effort to rebuild the trust that had been shattered. She was more open with Daniel, more willing to share her thoughts and feelings, and she made it clear that she was fully committed to their relationship. She knew that it would take time for Daniel to fully trust her again, but she was patient, understanding that trust had to be earned. The progress was slow, but it was real. They began to rediscover the things that had brought them together in the first place: the shared laughter, the quiet moments of connection, the love that had always been there, even beneath the pain. They weren't the same people they had been before the affair, and their relationship wasn't the same either. But they were building something new, something that, while scarred, was also stronger in many ways. As Daniel reflected on the journey they had been through, he realized that the road to healing was far from straightforward. It had been a journey marked by deep pain, anger, and regret, but also by growth, understanding, and ultimately, forgiveness. He had learned that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or condoning what had happened. It was about choosing to let go of the bitterness and resentment, about finding a way to move forward with an open heart. For Vanessa, the journey had been one of profound self-reflection. She had been forced to confront the darker parts of herself, to understand the reasons behind her actions, and to take responsibility for the hurt she had caused. But through that process, she had also discovered a strength within herself, a determination to rebuild, to make amends, and to become a better partner and mother. Their story wasn't one of a perfect fairy tale ending. There were still scars, still moments of doubt and fear. But they had chosen to face those challenges together, to rebuild their relationship on a foundation of honesty, communication, and mutual respect. They had learned that love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being willing to work through the imperfections, to grow and change together, even when it was difficult. For anyone who has faced betrayal or struggled to forgive, Daniel and Vanessa's story serves as a reminder that healing is possible. But it takes time, effort, and a willingness to confront the pain head-on. It's not an easy journey, but it's one that can lead to a deeper understanding of oneself and one's partner. In the end, it's not about erasing the past. It's about finding a way to live with it, to learn from it, and to use it as a foundation for a stronger, more resilient future. And that, Daniel realized, was the true essence of love: the ability to forgive, to grow, and to continue loving even in the face of adversity. If you like this story, we encourage you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support is essential for us to continue bringing you exciting stories regularly. Don't miss the next incredible story that's about to appear on your screen. See you soon. Goodbye.